We heard about Michelle. Michelle?
Oh, God, what about her?
She went missing.
And have you guys tried calling her? I have no idea how to help you with that. I've actually been trying to look for her.
Since when?
Almost a week now, to tell her to stay away from my daughter.
And talking to...
Authorities in California say human remains found in a San Francisco Bay Area canyon on Saturday are those of the missing nursing student who disappeared in May. Police declined to release any further information, saying only that the remains were identified after tests by the Alameda County coroner.
At one point, you and Michelle were close friends, is that right?
I consider her my sister.
And then, what happened?
She made a mistake. Scott made a mistake.
And then, was that when you were with Scott? Or had you guys broken up? Or
No, we were still together. They made the mistake twice.
were you surprised to see Michelle there?
Yes.
How did it make you feel when you saw her?
At first, surprised, and then annoyed, and then I thought, okay, keep your blood pressure down, otherwise you're going to lose this baby.
Welcome to the channel. But before we dive in, hey friends, if you end up liking this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Also, leave a comment letting me know what city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm super curious to see where my audience is tuning in from. Alright, now let's get started. We're heading back to May 2011, to Haywood, this small, cozy area in the US that's kind of famous for its peaceful, country vibes and natural beauty. You've got wide open spaces, wooded areas, and these really picturesque hills, perfect for hiking, chilling out, or just escaping the city chaos. People who love quiet, small crowds, and that classic American small-town feel are usually drawn here. If you're into history or local culture, Haywood has a few cute little museums, old buildings, and traditional fairs to check out too. Now, in the San Francisco Bay Area of California, that's where we meet 26-year-old Michelle L. She came from a big family and lived with her parents, her brother Michael and her cousin Christine.
Here we are in Santa Barbara Beach. We're having lots of fun. And here's my brother.
Michelle lived in a big, bustling household with 15 other cousins and a ton of aunts and uncles. Their home was always alive, smelling like fresh-baked goodies, filled with the laughter of kids, loud chatter around the dinner table, constant movement, and endless hugs. Every family gathering left this warm, safe feeling behind, even amidst all the chaos. Michelle's mom worked as a nurse, and her dedication, care for others, and tireless work ethic set a huge example for young Michelle. She grew up watching her mom save lives and support people through their toughest moments, day after day. When her mom, unfortunately, passed away, Michelle felt this deep, indescribable emptiness and pain. But at the same time, she knew one thing for sure. Now it was her responsibility to carry on, to live in a way her mom could be proud of. Michelle took on so much responsibility after losing our mom that she basically became a mom to all of us, her brother Michael said. She taught us how to drive, cook, shop, and always gave advice we didn't even know we needed. Even in the hardest moments, she was this rock we could lean on. Michelle waited patiently for 5 long years to get into a nursing program, and finally, her hard work paid off. She got accepted into an accelerated 1-year course. She threw herself into her studies, spending hours reading, practicing, and improving herself. By May 2011, she was only 6 months away from graduating from Samuel Merritt Nursing School. She consistently earned top grades, showing just how dedicated and determined she was. She was doing her clinical rotations at Kaiser Permanente Haywood Medical Center in the labor and delivery unit, where she stood out not just for her skills, but for her kindness and compassion toward patients. Hardworking, selfless, and always smiling, Michelle never shied away from tough work. She had this amazing ability to stay calm even during the most stressful moments, inspiring everyone around her and keeping her colleagues' spirits up. Despite all the losses and challenges she'd faced, she maintained this bright outlook on life, which made her presence comforting and hopeful for everyone around her. On May 20th, 2011, Michelle was on a rotation shift at the hospital. It had been a long, exhausting day, but nothing unusual had happened. It was Friday, and the vibe was all about the almost weekend energy. Students and staff were chatting about weekend plans, and the hallways had this impatient, excited buzz. For Michelle, it also meant a little escape from the daily grind. She had a trip to Reno to visit friends coming up that she'd been looking forward to. Around 6:55 in the evening, Michelle told her supervisor she was just going to run to her car for a few things. It would only take a couple of minutes. She left the unit, walked down the hospital corridors where the smell of disinfectant lingered and the day's warmth still hung in the air, and stepped out onto the third-floor parking deck. She headed toward her car, parked in a corner, pausing for a moment to take in the empty lot, the evening air on her skin, and the distant hum of the city below. It was just a normal, everyday move, but in that instant, the world around her felt quiet, almost peaceful. Then she paused for a moment, just standing there, before changing direction. 17 minutes later, her white Honda SUV suddenly pulled out of the building. It was almost the end of the shift, around 9 p.m., and the supervisors were gathering all the students in a small room for end-of-day wrap-ups, going over final instructions before the weekend. But Michelle still hadn't shown up. Her personal things and jacket were sitting neatly in their usual spot in the staff room, just like always. She hadn't signed out, and her phone kept ringing non-stop, shattering the quiet that had settled into the evening hospital halls. Concerns started to spread among her co-workers, and anxiety quietly began to build. The instructor, feeling uneasy and realizing this wasn't normal, grabbed someone from security, and together they rushed down to the parking deck where Michelle's car was usually parked. But it was weirdly quiet and empty, no sign of her at all. The stillness on a lot normally alive with car engines and footsteps felt unnatural, almost unsettling. A few minutes later, Michelle's car suddenly pulled back into the building and climbed up to the third floor. The instructor waved frantically, trying to get the driver's attention. The car hesitated for a moment, almost like it was thinking, then slowly rolled past them and disappeared back out of the building. The instructor's heart sank. This was nothing like Michelle. She knew Michelle always acted carefully, confidently, predictably, and this behavior was off, almost foreign. She wasn't just worried. She genuinely doubted the person behind the wheel was Michelle. Without wasting a second, she called the police, a cold shiver of fear running down her spine. The next morning, there was still no sign of 26-year-old Michelle. Nearly 10 hours had passed since anyone last saw her. About 15 friends and colleagues arrived at the police station, anxious and confused. They couldn't stress enough how out of character this was for Michelle. She was always punctual, responsible, and predictable. Now, something was clearly very wrong. They were determined. They wouldn't leave until a serious investigation started. The police got the alert, and detectives immediately began searching the hospital parking deck. The morning quiet was settling into this tense, waiting kind of feeling. Meanwhile, her ex-boyfriend, who still stayed in touch with Michelle as a friend, began calling her family, trying to convey just how serious the situation was. And then they found traces of blood where her Honda had been parked. Tiny, almost imperceptible drops, but enough to make hearts tighten with fear and helplessness. By 9 a.m., her car was found neatly parked in a visitor spot, about half a mile from the hospital, locked up tight. Inside, her laptop and a random Samuel Merritt University student ID were left on the back seat. That little detail immediately raised eyebrows. Michelle had no connection to the ID's owner, and no reason to have it at all. In fact, the card had been reported stolen just a few days before Michelle went missing, which made everything feel even more mysterious and unsettling. Every little detail of the scene screamed that something had seriously disrupted this young woman's normal life. The police immediately suspected an outsider, someone who knew Michelle's schedule, someone who planned this ahead of time. Maybe this person had stolen the student ID to get inside the building without any issues, and then somehow got Michelle out to the parking lot, possibly leaving with her in the car. The whole situation felt too precise and calculated to be a random stranger wandering the lot. There was logic and planning behind it. Hospital records showed that roughly 30 minutes after Michelle had gone to her car, a call came into the emergency department. It was Michelle Lay, or at least someone claiming to be her. The voice on the line was clear, but a bit controlled. She asked to speak to her instructor, but the call went to the wrong department. Then the woman asked the receptionist to pass along a message that her father had suffered a heart attack. When Michelle's car was taken for further investigation, her brother Michael suddenly got a text from her phone. "I'm okay," and immediately after, another one came through. "I didn't disappear. My phone's acting weird, it's deleting all these messages and draining the battery. Those short messages only added to the chaos and confusion. Michelle's friends started getting them one after another, and each one seemed like its own little story, sending everyone's minds spinning. One message mentioned a flat tire, another said she was already back in Reno, yet another said she needed a break from social media, and another claimed she was sick and needed rest. Each message sounded believable on its own, but the bigger picture just kept getting stranger and more unsettling. Her ex-boyfriend noticed the activity on her phone right away and texted her, hoping for some kind of explanation. What he got back only made things worse. Who is this? The situation kept getting more confusing and dangerous for anyone trying to figure out what was going on. By May 31st, the reward for any information about Michelle was at $220,000, and within a few days, it had nearly doubled to $500,000. The Lay family hired a private detective to speed up the investigation, and over 100 volunteers joined the search, forming 14 teams that spread out for miles around the hospital and Michelle's neighborhood. The reward kept growing day by day, reaching $100,000, which only highlighted how serious things had gotten and how desperate her family was to find her as quickly as possible. As detectives dug into Michelle's personal relationships, one name kept coming up in conversations and messages: Giselle Esteban. Michelle had had issues with an old school friend she'd once been inseparable from. They'd spent years together, shared all the ups and downs of friendship, even moved in together for college, always supporting each other through tough times. But everything changed after certain events that left a permanent crack in their relationship. Giselle had previously been in a romantic relationship with a man named Scott, and they had a 6-year-old daughter. Their relationship ended badly, leaving behind emotional tension and resentment, which gradually started to spill over into Michelle and Giselle's friendship. According to the detectives, that's when the problems between them began. Even before Giselle and Scott became a couple, Michelle and Scott had met a few times, but it quickly became clear there was never going to be anything romantic between them. Everything stayed strictly friendly, no intimacy, no hidden feelings. Later, Giselle and Scott started dating, but for some reason, Giselle became fixated on imagined relationships and false ideas about the past, despite the actual timeline and facts. As Giselle's behavior started to shift, her friendship with Michelle began to drift apart. Michelle stayed honest and straightforward. She and Scott were just good friends, and she had no intention of cutting off contact with him just because Giselle wanted her to. She also didn't pay much attention to Giselle's strange, obsessive claims. Michelle had been in a relationship with someone else for a long time, and Scott was simply living his own life. Everything Giselle believed was far from the truth, but her obsession with this false version of events was becoming more and more obvious. The detectives decided to speak directly with 27-year-old Giselle. The meeting was tense from the start, and immediately made it clear there was no love or sympathy here. Giselle didn't even try to hide her emotions. Her coldness and detachment were obvious. There was a palpable tension in the room, which, as it turned out later, could be significant for the investigation. Every glance, every word revealed an inner conflict and a possible vested interest in the unfolding situation.
We're here about Michelle. Michelle?
Oh God, what about her?
She went missing.
And have you guys tried calling her? I have no idea how to help you with that. I've actually been trying to look for her.
Since when?
Almost a week now, to tell her to stay away from my daughter.
And talking to her friends and such, we understand that you guys had a tumultuous relationship.
A tumultuous relationship? She was my best friend who slept with my then fiancé.
After that, detectives tracked down Scott. He was open during questioning, fully cooperative, and according to investigators, he came across as genuine and truly shaken. His face, his eyes, even the tone of his voice showed more than simple concern. There was real personal pain there. Scott regularly showed up at the many candlelight vigils for Michelle, talked openly about the times they'd spent together as friends, and actively joined search efforts, doing whatever he could to help people find answers. He laid out the complicated reality of his life with Giselle. He told detectives how she hadn't just tormented him, but had also dragged his entire family into years of unnecessary conflict and emotional strain. At one particularly difficult point, Giselle moved back in with her family and took their daughter with her, which only added more pressure and stress. Scott said all he ever wanted was to give his daughter the best life possible, and because of that, he kept trying every so often to give the relationship another chance. I hope you find what you're looking for in someone as disgusting as her. Another message had an even more threatening edge to it. This is the only thing that will convince me you're trying to be better. Otherwise, be ready to answer for your bad actions and decisions. But one message, in particular, stood out as deeply disturbing. Scott made sure detectives saw it. Michelle dug her own grave by destroying families, and this problem won't last much longer. Just so you know, you drove me insane by putting that ugly thing above your own family. You should have loved her and me more, but instead, you loved sex and attention more. That's exactly what you're going to get now. You reap what you sow. The messages kept coming non-stop. Giselle also sent messages directly to Michelle, and these were particularly harsh and personal. In one, she wrote, "If you were really anyone's friend, mine or Scott's, you'd just leave my family alone. But you're nothing but a monster with nothing better to do. So you had to follow me to SF. This is all you'll ever be, a monster sleeping with other people's men and brothers. Because no one ever wanted you. You're not my friend. You were always just a parasite." Every line of that message dripped with anger and resentment. After this, Scott shared with the police something he had never told anyone before, a recording of one of Giselle's hysterical outbursts. He explained that it had been recorded in a car while their daughter sat in the back seat. Giselle's voice was shrill, irritated, and predatory, carrying every ounce of hate and frustration in every word. Scott said that even he, who had known her for years, was shocked by the level of aggression and instability she displayed. For the detectives, the recording was critical. It revealed the true extent of the psychological pressure Giselle could exert and highlighted the potential danger she posed to anyone near Michelle.
I asked you, can we just be honest about Michelle, because she's the one issue that I really, really am having a hard time dealing with.
That's not what you said at all.
Yes! Okay,
We
well
didn't
then
talk for
fine.
days.
Starting from now, we are going to be honest about Michelle. Do you understand me?
Okay.
Whether you sleep with her, whether you share food with her, whether you talk to her, you will be honest with me. Look at me! You will be honest with me regarding her. Otherwise, I will take your life and hers. Mom. And you can take that to the grave with you.
Why?
Why? Because you lied about her so many times, it's hard to believe that you didn't sleep with her and knock her up. You deserve to die for your lies, as does she. And you will. If you do it again, this is your last and final warning.
Why?
Do you understand me? It's your last and final warning.
Scott told detectives that Giselle had spent some time under supervision in psychiatric facilities, where she was diagnosed with manic depression and bipolar disorder. Her behavior was unpredictable and dangerous. She could show up suddenly, without any warning, anywhere she felt she had the right to be. Sometimes she would just appear outside Scott's home, where he lived with his mother, acting as if it were completely normal. On some occasions, she even went inside without permission, quietly sitting in a room and watching everything until a shocked and frightened family member found her. These episodes left a lingering sense of violated personal space and an ever-present, undefined threat. Eventually, Scott gained full custody of their daughter, which, according to investigators, only infuriated Giselle more and prompted her to move back to Haywood to stay closer to Scott and his family. Her presence in the neighborhood created a constant atmosphere of tension and fear. Neighbors and acquaintances noticed her unexplained visits, and Scott and his family lived under ongoing psychological pressure. But the final trigger, which may have set her actions in motion, was a court-issued restraining order. The order explicitly forbade Giselle from coming within 100 feet of Scott or any of his family members. According to Scott, the restraining order was meant to protect his family, but for Giselle, it wasn't just a formality. She saw it as an insult and a challenge. Notably, this restraining order was issued just 3 days before Michelle went missing, adding a chilling sense of a chain of events leading up to the tragedy. Every detail of this story underscored that Giselle was emotionally unstable, viewing the world through a lens of resentment and control, and that her actions could have far-reaching, unpredictable consequences for anyone around her. The sense of threat and tension grew heavier with each passing moment, creating the feeling that, at any second, everything could change.
Almost a week has passed and still no sign of Michelle Lay, a 26-year-old California nurse who seems to have vanished after going to her car at a hospital. The car later found on this street. The search now by leaflet.
I just wanted home.
Meanwhile, police in Hayward, California are talking to police in Fairfield about an unsolved murder last year of Nurse Fong Lei.
They have the same last name, that they are both nursing students, that they both disappeared mysteriously.
But in Fairfield, the car was unlocked.
In our case, the vehicle was secured. It was locked up, as if the last person to drive that vehicle wanted to make sure that the interior was protected.
Now, police in Hayward are examining more surveillance footage, hoping one camera got a good look at Michelle Leigh's car. Her brother says it is not like his sister to lose contact.
She always calls me that it's Mother's Day, and I should call my grandma.
Now a reward for information about missing Michelle, with word going out, one poster at a time.
Almost a week had passed, and there was still no sign of Michelle Leigh. The 26-year-old nurse from California, always punctual, responsible, and predictable, seemed to have vanished into thin air after walking to her car near the hospital. Her vehicle, later found on the same street, offered no answers, only deepening the sense of unease. Now, the search wasn't just in the hands of the police. Neighbors, friends, and volunteers were plastering the town with flyers, each one showing Michelle's face and asking anyone who might have seen her to come forward. Everyone just wanted her to come home alive. Meanwhile, the Hayward, California police had started talking with authorities in Fairfield about the unsolved murder of Nurse Fong L, which had happened the year before. They discovered a striking coincidence. Both women shared the same last name, both were nursing students, and both had vanished mysteriously. The similarity was enough to make detectives seriously consider a possible connection. But there was one difference. In Fairfield, the car had been found unlocked, whereas Michelle's SUV was locked, as if the last person to use it had tried to protect the interior, leaving behind traces of their presence, and maybe something far more sinister. Hayward police were now combing through even more surveillance footage around the hospital, hoping that at least one camera had captured the moment Michelle's car appeared or disappeared. Her brother couldn't hide his worry. He knew this behavior was completely out of character for her. She always called me to remind me it was Mother's Day, and that I needed to call our grandma, he said, trying to stay calm, though every passing hour without news only made the fear grow. Meanwhile, the reward for any information about Michelle continued to rise each day, and rumors spread across the city one flyer at a time, stirring both hope and fear. Police kept emphasizing that they were hoping Michelle was still alive, but given all the evidence they had, the detectives had to prepare for the worst. The tension in the precinct kept mounting, every new piece of information only sharpening that gnawing sense of unpredictable danger. Police fears escalated when the analysis of Michelle's car revealed the presence of her blood. Her family was immediately called to the precinct and informed that this case was no longer just a missing person investigation. It had now become a full-blown suspected homicide. However, law enforcement couldn't release all the details about what exactly had been found inside the vehicle. Understandably shaken and frightened, the family insisted that, until they heard something concrete, they would continue the search just as before, holding on to hope that Michelle could still be brought home safe and unharmed. The only name that kept coming up again and again in the investigation was Giselle. Because of this, she was called in for a full interrogation. At that time, Giselle was several months pregnant with her second child. She admitted that on the night Michelle disappeared, she had been at the hospital, supposedly for a routine checkup. But her presence raised even more questions. Was it really just a normal visit, or was none of what she said actually true? Detectives were left facing a tense dilemma, whether to trust her words or rely solely on the hard evidence they had been gathering.
At one point, you and Michelle were close friends, is that right?
I considered her my sister.
And then, what happened?
She made a mistake. Scott made a mistake.
And then, was that when you were with Scott? Or had you guys broken up? Or
No, we were still together. They made the mistake twice.
were you surprised to see Michelle there?
Yes.
How did it make you feel when you saw her?
At first, surprised, and then annoyed, and then I thought, okay, keep your blood pressure down, otherwise you're gonna lose this baby.
They let her go, but the police continued to watch her very closely, even placing a tracker on her car. They were convinced she had some connection to Michelle's disappearance, but whether she acted alone, that was still a question. Giselle was pregnant and petite, standing only about 5 feet 2 inches tall. Could she really have done all of this by herself?
Investigating the disappearance of a California nursing student. Now have a person of interest, they tell us. Authorities are focusing on a former friend.
Giselle Esteban. According to witnesses who lived near Esteban, police were at her apartment in recent days with a crime lab team to go over her car. Everything from that to the trash, we're told from neighbors. So far, no charges against Esteban, and she's told local media she had nothing to do with Michelle Lee's disappearance. Now, in the search for Michelle, her dad has arrived from Vietnam. There is the tip line. If you live in that area of Northern California and can help, 510-293-7000.
Later, Scott called the police, saying he thought he'd found Michelle's phone. It was lying on the back seat of his own car, almost quietly, almost invisible, but at the same time sending a clear message. This phone didn't just end up there by accident. When investigators checked the tracker on Giselle's car and saw that she had repeatedly driven down his street and parked near his house, it became obvious she had planted the phone, trying to make it look like Michelle might be nearby, or that she was okay. That single detail gave the detectives a whole new lead and confirmed their suspicions about Giselle's involvement. The nursing school's security team dug through all the data, trying to trace the path of the ID card to see exactly where it had been scanned before showing up on the back seat of Michelle's Honda. Careful analysis revealed a chilling detail. On May 26th, just 1 day before Michelle disappeared, the card had been scanned inside the school building, and the scan showed it was Giselle. According to investigators, she got the card early in the morning on May 26th, pretending to be a student who supposedly wanted to enroll. With that fake ID in hand, Giselle gained access to the building and started snooping through the halls, checking locked doors, peeking into classrooms, and observing the flow of people. She moved as if everything was completely normal, but every step she took carried a sense of intrusion, of control being violated. Her actions pointed to careful planning. She knew exactly where to go, how to use someone else's access, and how to leave a trace without being noticed. The situation grew even more unsettling. She waited until the building emptied, lingering as most people went home, leaving silent hallways that Giselle used to her advantage. The atmosphere of the empty school, the echo of footsteps in deserted classrooms, every sound seemed like a potential threat to anyone unaware of what was happening. The next time she entered, it was through a back exit, unnoticed. Dressed in a white lab coat, she methodically prowled the same classrooms, checking computers and files as if carrying out a carefully orchestrated operation. Her movements were precise and deliberate, opening cabinets, rifling through drawers, scanning documents, all to gather information without being seen. Eventually, Giselle reached the teacher's desk and took the student schedules, one of which belonged to Michelle. This was a pivotal moment. She left about an hour and a half later, now knowing exactly when Michelle would be on break the next day, allowing her to plan her next steps with minute-by-minute accuracy. Phone analysis revealed that after Michelle's disappearance, Giselle's and Michelle's phones were in the same location at the same time, immediately confirming investigators' suspicions. Someone was deliberately using Michelle's phone to send false messages to friends and family. The next day, with Michelle already gone, Giselle went to an Apple store, claiming the iPhone had accidentally locked itself. The phone was unlocked, and she left with it in hand, heading to Chuck E. Cheese. Meanwhile, Michelle's friends began receiving strange and clearly fake messages. Mobile tower data confirmed it was Michelle's iPhone, but Giselle was the one behind the wheel and sending the texts. Security cameras at Chuck E. Cheese captured her sending messages to all contacts, skillfully hiding her presence. These facts gave police enough evidence to make an arrest. The 7-year-old Giselle Esteban was arrested at her home and charged with first-degree murder. A pair of shoes stained with Michelle's blood was found by the door, and hair matching Giselle's was discovered on the back seat of Michelle's car. DNA from the suspect was also found on the steering wheel, conclusively confirming her involvement. Together, these pieces painted a grim picture of a meticulously planned stalking and a crime born from obsessive fixation and manipulation.
Police in Northern California have arrested a high school friend of a nursing student missing for more than 3 months. Jail records indicate that Giselle Esteban is being held on suspicion of murder.
Our primary concern was, is, and will always be to find Michelle and bring her home with us. At this point, she is still missing, and we will fight to bring her home every day until we have her with our family again.
The reality is we don't have Michelle. That's a piece we're not going to close out on until we find her, until her location is known.
A check of Giselle's computer revealed disturbing and chilling details. In the days leading up to Michelle's disappearance, she had been researching ways to induce a heart attack without leaving any trace, methods for discreetly stalking someone, lock tampering, and the use of highly toxic gases such as potassium chloride and carbon monoxide. Her searches were meticulous and methodical, revealing a cold, calculating mindset. Even after Michelle vanished, Giselle continued obsessively monitoring her online. Michelle's name appeared in her search history over 300 times, showing a relentless fixation and a desire to maintain control from a distance. On September 17, just 10 days after Giselle's arrest, the family faced the worst-case scenario they had feared during those agonizing weeks. Michelle Lay's remains were discovered in a shallow grave hidden in a remote, rocky, and difficult-to-access area. 3 months of disappearance had left its mark. Only a skeleton remained, making it impossible to determine the exact cause of death. The site was roughly 12 miles from Giselle's home, and the location seemed deliberately chosen, a secluded and nearly inaccessible spot meant to conceal the crime. The discovery confirmed the family and friends' worst fears. Michelle was dead, and her disappearance had not been random or unexplained. At the same time, it provided investigators with concrete evidence that the crime had been carefully planned, executed with cold calculation, and fueled by an obsession that had grown over months. The burial site, its isolation, and the circumstances of the crime underscored Giselle's caution and methodical planning, confronting the police with the harsh and grim reality of the deliberate, obsessive violence they were dealing with.
Authorities in California say human remains found in a San Francisco Bay Area canyon on Saturday are those of the missing nursing student who disappeared in May. Police declined to release any further information, saying only that the remains were identified after tests by the Alameda County coroner.
In September 2012, the trial of Giselle Esteban began. Following her arrest, she initially maintained her innocence, but during the proceedings, she admitted to killing Michelle. Giselle claimed it had been an impulsive, accidental act, alleging that Michelle had somehow provoked her. Her attorney argued that her actions amounted to voluntary manslaughter rather than first-degree murder, attempting to mitigate the potential sentence. Despite this, Giselle did not testify in court and showed no remorse or sympathy. She simply sat in the defendant's chair, staring blankly, her face betraying no emotion, as if the trial held no significance for her. How exactly had Michelle ended up in the parking lot with Giselle? Had she been waiting for her, knowing her schedule down to the minute? Had she used messages to lure her outside? The prosecution could not provide definitive answers, but presented a compelling theory. Giselle had approached Michelle and attacked her with a sharp object. This explained the blood evidence, and how the perpetrator could have easily placed the victim in the back seat and fled. The district attorney stated plainly in court, "This is a sociopath." Giselle laughed while recounting the murder, her voice devoid of any trace of remorse, a calculated, cold-blooded, strategic attack on someone unsuspecting. Her behavior sent chills through the courtroom. Her laughter and emotional detachment highlighted the cruelty and deliberation behind the crime. Ultimately, Giselle was found guilty of first-degree murder. True to form, she showed no reaction to the verdict, leaving the courtroom without uttering a word. In a rare moment of candor later, she reportedly admitted that if she had been a juror, she would likely have sentenced herself. The presiding judge, a seasoned veteran, remarked that he had never encountered such compelling and clear evidence of a cold, meticulously planned crime in his career. Giselle was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of life imprisonment. Her conviction served as a definitive statement that deliberate and premeditated cruelty would not go unpunished. Yet for Michelle's family and friends, the verdict could not erase the deep wound left by her loss, the memory of Michelle's smile, her kindness, and how abruptly their lives had been shattered by a single, obsessive, cold-blooded individual.
Two local families torn apart by a murder sparked by a jealous rage.
Today, a judge sentenced Giselle Esteban to 25 years to life in prison for killing nursing student Michelle Lay.
Giselle Esteban never apologized for killing San Diego nursing student Michelle Lay, convicted in October for her murder. Today, an Alameda judge says she never showed a hint of remorse.
He made a really great observation, and we always felt, sitting in trial, that she felt no remorse. just stared directly at our family with a blank stare.
Lay's uncle in Mira Mesa is disappointed. He says the family had hoped for a mandatory life sentence without parole.
We might have to go back up there in who knows when. Anytime she's up for a parole hearing, then it all comes up again.
In court, Michelle's only brother Michael broke down as he talked about his sister's plan to follow in their late mother's footsteps to become a nurse. Those dreams ended when Esteban killed Lay in a Bay Area hospital parking garage. Prosecutors say she snapped in a jealous rage when she mistakenly thought Lay was moving in on her boyfriend. Lay's brother is now hoping his sister will be remembered many years from now, in 2029, when her killer could be up for parole.
We just want them to know after 25 years to know how unique this case was and to give a face to Michelle's case.
At this point, it's up to the Department of Corrections if Esteban will, in fact, be paroled. The judge says in order for that to happen, Esteban would have to develop a serious sense of remorse.
Later, Giselle gave birth to a son who was placed under the custody of his father. Rumors circulated that Scott was the father, but he firmly denied this. And the child's true father remains a mystery, adding yet another unsettling layer to an already chilling story. Michelle's cousin, Christine, commented that by committing this crime, Giselle only showcased her own ugliness, while simultaneously highlighting Michelle's beauty and kindness. In her view, it was a cold-blooded, calculated act, driven by jealousy, obsession, and all-consuming hatred toward two people who had done nothing wrong but live their lives. This tragedy revealed the darkest depths of human psychology, where envy and obsession can transform into incomprehensible cruelty. Michelle's family continues to volunteer, raising awareness for other missing persons and helping to shed light on similar cases. Her brother Michael shares that he believes his sister is now with their mother and holds on to hope that he may one day be reunited with them. That thought offers a small measure of comfort amid the grief and fear that gripped the family during those tragic months. When Michelle first went missing, her father spent Father's Day tirelessly searching for her. He had always been proud of her hard work and the full life she led, but admitted he had never asked her to spend even one Father's Day together. After the tragedy, he could only wish to turn back time, to experience that simple, yet invaluable moment together at least once. Michelle's story left a lasting impact on everyone who knew her. It stands as a stark reminder of the destructive power of human jealousy and obsession. Her life, kindness, and smile remain etched in memory, and her family continues to carry her legacy forward, helping others and reminding the world of the value of every individual. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. I hope you found this story both compelling and important. If you'd like to support my channel and help continue creating content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support truly matters, and I deeply appreciate everyone who helps keep these stories alive.